All right. Am I good? Kerwin, am I good with this? Okay. All right. Thank you guys for all being here. Obviously that was another really disappointing loss. I'm proud of our football team and the way they fought. Obviously we've got a lot to clean up. Kind of hitting a couple different points. I thought, especially for 3 quarters of football offensively, I was really proud of what we were able to get done. I thought we moved the ball efficiently, had no issues with the game plan. Obviously offensively, turnovers is a critical point for us. So we can't, bottom line is we can't turn the ball over. And in my mind, I kind of count that 4th down stand as a turnover. So we had 2 in the first half. Outside of those, I thought we moved the ball effectively. And then obviously in the second half, we have to be able to continue to move the ball down the field. Defensively, we have a lot to improve on. We have to tackle better, get off the field. We had way too many, unnecessary penalties. And obviously the buck stops with me, and we have to improve, and we will. But I do want to reiterate, I'm really proud of our guys competing until the very end and not letting go of the rope, so to speak. And I know I've said that before, but, the effort is there, kind of like I've mentioned in weeks past. The execution has to clean up, and that has to be the thing, that we will continue to emphasize with this football team is, we have to look internally, coaches, myself, players, and we've got to improve, knowing our assignment, executing, and things of that nature. But overall, I'm confident that we'll be able to improve, and we're really looking forward to, one more guaranteed opportunity. And I told the team, after the game in the locker room, football is a unique game. It teaches you a lot about yourself. It teaches you a lot about life. And sometimes when things don't go your way, how you respond out of those things is really everything. And so we have one more guaranteed opportunity in front of us, and we have to improve, and we're looking forward to facing Arlington at home next Sunday. Open for questions.
Yeah, I got you. Can you guys hear me all right?
Yep, got you.
All right, Coach, can you talk us through Kellen Anderson's performance? What did you see from him kind of taking the reins of the offense again?
I can't say enough about how proud I am of Kellen. I thought he had a excellent football game. And really, the big thing that I want to speak on, and obviously he's sitting here, but I would say this privately to him. I'm not at all surprised by Kellen's performance because of how he prepares. He is truly the epitome of the word professional. And in the ebbs and flows that we had of this football season, he continued to have a positive attitude, continued to prepare as if he was the starter. And so when he got this opportunity, I thought he took advantage of it and did a lot of really good things overall. I'm really, really proud of Kellen and his performance today.
You touched on the defense a little bit, but what were some of the things that you saw that were missing to prevent the guys from getting some more stops earlier in the game?
I think, for one, tackling, a big continued emphasis that we'll have moving forward is, I don't know how else to say it outside of bad eyes. There were a lot of double move opportunities that St. Louis had. That really comes down to the technical side of, as an example, when we're playing man-to-man, we have to play it with the correct technique. We've got to be detailed, in our assignments. And I think a lot of times it was poor technique that put us in bad positions. Really on all 3 phases, definitely offense and defense. And so to me, it really comes down to making sure we're putting our guys in the best position possible for them to be successful, and then honing back in on the technique and the details. Because at the end of the day, scheme aside, you can do so many different things that all work well, but if the technique is not correct behind it, you'll have issues with it. So that's going to be, a big point of emphasis is honing in on the technique.
That group was so strong really all last year. In the big picture, what are the things you can point to that have made it difficult for the defense to be as strong as they were a season ago?
I think it's a collection of things. Obviously we have some different personnel. This year, I would say we have plenty of talent. It just comes back to, looking at the season overall, to me, it's tackling, penalties, and knowing our assignment and executing that with the proper technique. Kind of like previously mentioned. I believe in the guys that we have in this locker room, and I know that we can improve. And so that was my big challenge to them is, in situations like this, obviously it's a very disappointing outcome. how we respond from this. We have one more guaranteed opportunity, and you never know. Football has a funny way of telling everybody when it's time. And so this is a blessing that we have to have one more game in front of us. And I think our preparation this week is going to be heavily emphasized on the technique behind what we're calling.
Kellen, for you, how did you feel about your performance today? What stood out taking the reins of the offense again?
I felt like we had a really good offensive game plan. Me and Peyton, we met before the game, kind of went over what we kind of were expecting from the defense, what were some of our openers, what do we want to get to, and I think just especially in the first half and even in the third quarter, just the balance of the run and pass game and just really the efficiency in the pass game as well. I think our third drive was an 18-play drive, which was phenomenal, and I think we ended with a touchdown on that drive. So had a lot of huge opportunities that were probably left on the field, some potential touchdowns. In terms of my play, I felt great out there. I said it for a while, but I feel like I've improved throughout the season, and I think just always staying ready and preparing as if you're the starter, and nothing changed with my schedule, just still getting up there early, preparing as if I was the starter, and just sometimes you never would know when your name's going to be called, and that's how it is in the NFL. So you never know when your name's going to be called in the NFL. You might get called up one week, and you may be playing a few weeks later, and that's the opportunity you've been waiting for. So every opportunity I get to step on the field, I want to make sure I can do my best and give my team the best opportunity to win.
Was there any sense of frustration for you today? I know you guys were moving the ball pretty well, but one fourth down stop and then one fumble return, and suddenly you're in a hole despite kind of playing pretty well. What are the emotions of that like?
Yeah, I mean, there's always frustration. I think you kind of got to wipe it off. And the first one, I kind of had a feeling just with the open edge, and then we get stuffed on the fourth and inches, 4th and 1. And then, we're driving, moving the ball, and then we have a key fumble, and, no one sees the ball pop out, including myself, and they return it for a touchdown. And then, we had no problem moving the ball. Just, you never know. I've been saying it for weeks. You never know which play is going to be the biggest play. And those two plays ended up being extremely big for us. But I'm really confident in this offense and the way that we can play, and we all have one more opportunity together. Some guys may be done with football, some guys may be trying to prolong their career, but everyone has one more opportunity that's guaranteed, and we got to make the most out of our opportunity.
Last question for me, was there anything that made it a little bit more difficult to get going in the second half? You guys were not having the same kind of success you did early.
I can't remember exact plays. I think just a lot of the stuff comes back to detail. Where one of the plays, I think on a third down or maybe a second down, where we get a clean curl route look and we go too far on our route, just kind of a focus type of deal, and it ends up being incomplete when, if he runs the route, it's probably complete. And so it's just a lot of stuff always comes back to small details, and that's how it is in the NFL. And a lot of our guys, and especially in this league, once you get to the NFL, you're always coming in as probably, QB4, QB5, receiver 8 or 9, and, you can't afford to make small detail mistakes. And so you could always tell based on some of the best teams in this league and some of the teams that didn't have the most success, a lot of times it always comes down to a few plays in a game and just the details on those plays.
James, you have a couple?
I do. Hey, Coach. Obviously a tough one tonight. We saw Shawn Fresh get his first reps of the season after joining the team just about a week ago. Had a couple good reps against Hakeem Butler, then also gives up a touchdown. What was kind of the thought process behind? Obviously this might be a question for Will Reed, but what was the thought process behind having him lined up against Butler, arguably the top wide receiver in this league?
I think part of it comes down to personnel and, where we are at that position. We have, really we're kind of, when you look at body profiles, we're all really in the same general vicinity as far as height, weight, and things of that nature. I thought Shawn did some good things, and then obviously, like we talked about, really it comes back to honing in on the details and the technique. That to me is the big point within each individual play. But overall, I thought we felt comfortable with the matchup going in. Obviously, Hakeem Butler is a phenomenal football player, and he's hard to match up to, period in general. And so, in essence, that was the thought process. I thought Shawn has provided some, juice, if you will, with some fresh legs, and I thought he did some good things today. But overall, not just him. Overall, we have to continue to improve on the technical side.
And then follow up on that, Jaden Sheran had that big kickoff return to kind of close the half. He's a guy that came over just a couple weeks ago from the Michigan Panthers. Was he someone you were kind of scouting before he left the Panthers, or was it more so just right place, right time, picked him up, and got to see him make a big play?
Obviously, when guys are on other teams' rosters, there's not really a whole lot that you can do about that. But, something that I think Mark Lillibridge and myself do a really good job of is, checking the waiver wire and seeing, which guys have been let go and, if we think that they would be a good fit for us. And obviously, he had an explosive touchdown against us in week 3. And so we'd been familiar with his performance and, thought he was a dynamic playmaker. Obviously, we've had some injuries, at the running back position, and we thought he could help fill a void with a particular type of back that we were looking for. And I'm really, really proud of him. He's a great example, of a lot of players that we have on this team. Kellen kind of mentioned it earlier. When an opportunity arises, what you do with that opportunity, is everything. And I thought he capitalized in that, in that exact example. And I thought he did some really good things for us today.
And then finally for Kellen, on that fourth down pass to D. Anderson in the fourth quarter, he's kind of short of the sticks. I know you were under pressure. Can you kind of take me through what you saw on that play and what the decision was there?
Yeah, I think we were trying to run kind of a scissors, deep concept on the right, and then kind of meshing our 2 inside receivers and just kind of pure progression across the board. I think we got one of our sail routes and corner routes kind of got trapped inside, going inside on an inside release, and then I just saw D kind of flash, kind of his helmet flash. I couldn't really see past the line of scrimmage and just tried to get the ball out of my hands to even, give us an opportunity to convert. But it was something that a second time we ran it, and we had a good look at it the first time as well, that we didn't complete. But yeah, I mean, it felt like it was there.
Anything else?
All right. Thank you, guys.